Hi everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be going over the top 5 infantry dragons in Fire Emblem Heroes. So there's been a little bit of delay in getting this video out. I actually moved apartments, so I had to take a second to get the internet set up here and everything, but now that's all taken care of, and I'm ready to start putting out more regular content again, so that's good. So we've already done a lot of these top 5 videos. We've done all of the mages, red, blue, green mages. We have done sword, axe, lance. We've also now done stabs, bows, daggers. So the only thing left to do is the dragons and the beasts. So today we are tackling the dragons, and then tomorrow we'll tackle the beasts as well. And then coming this weekend, we'll have a special video with a special guest, hopefully, to put all of these top 5 videos together as well. So that's exciting. Stay tuned for that. Without further ado, let's get into our pick for number 5.
Leave the fighting to me. I can change into a dragon, you know.
So coming in at number 5, we have Na. And Na is kind of an overlooked older unit. Not really that much older, but a little bit older unit. So her breath effect is basically if she has any kind of visible stat buff, so something like a hone or a rally on her, the foe cannot make a follow-up attack. That's actually a really powerful effect. It has the activation condition, which is, sometimes hard to activate. But overall, it's not that difficult, especially with something like Aether Raid's offense, like the build you see here. Using something like a Link with a Smite, or using Peony's Gentle Dream buff can give her those visible buffs she needs to activate Oracle's Breath. She's also a very good user of the Dragon Wall skill. So Dragon Wall gives damage reduction based on the unit's resistance. So she's only going to be taking 1 hit, and then she's going to be firing off 2 hits in retaliation with Quick Riposte, and having that first hit be probably, typically, I would say, 40% reduced damage if everything's going right for you. So she is a really strong unit overall, and I'll just cover this now. All of the units that you see for Aether Raid's offense are going to be in the light season today. You don't really want to use dragons on an Astra offense because Thrasier exists, and Thrasier has dragon effectiveness. So something like Na maybe can actually deal with something like Thrasier, but it's overall not recommended. Definitely want to keep your dragons in light season as much as possible. And when it comes to being a light season carry, Na is definitely not a slouch.
That blood coursing through my veins, it grows restless.
Number 4 is going to be Fallen Female Corrin, and I decided to, like I did with the Byleths, just kind of combine these two. So Fallen Male Corrin is very comparable in a lot of ways. He has 1 less stat overall from his weapon. He has different stat allocation as well, but the big thing is he's blue. And so I've chosen to feature female Corrin here because she is colorless, and that is most of the time a better thing to have on a generalist tank like you have for Aether Raids here. So she's a great user of null follow-up. She gets a bunch of extra stats by being alone, so she wants to be an independent unit. And honestly, that's a good thing to have. So for your support unit, you could run something like a Dancer, something like Bridal Fjorm if you want even more isolation on top of Mila. She's definitely a really, really powerful unit that just has a good deal of stats. She's basically a stat stick, right? So that's something that Fallen Male Corrin has over her, is that guard effect. But when you're stacking speed this much and running null follow-up, the guard effect doesn't really come in handy that often. So it can come in handy against things like brave weapons, for example, people charging off their brave weapons, or on the rare occasion that someone outspeeds you. But you're really trying to, with these null follow-up units, make sure that you're always getting the double off on your opponent and they're never doubling you. So it's really hard for your opponent to charge up specials, right? Obviously, if the opponent survives, then they can have their special charged up, but with Pulse Smoke, that makes it a little bit more difficult for them, right? So again, with things, if you're running something like Pulse Smoke, the guard effect does become redundant. So again, that's why I've chosen female Corrin here. And she is just a really great stat stick and makes a good carry for the light season.
If something precious is stolen from you, you must do whatever it takes to recover it.
coming in at number 3, we have Seiros. So Seiros is pretty much a staple right now. That's going to change by the time the next Anima Mythic releases, right? So she's a staple because she enables the 7th unit slot. So she's a must-have for players right now that want to use that 7th unit slot, and will be for quite a bit of time until we get the next Anima Mythic. So she is really good, but I worry about her longevity, and so that's why she's not, you know, she could very easily be number 1 if she was going to be the only unit ever to enable that 7th unit slot, but we are going to get more of those units at some point in the future. That being said, she is a very good unit. She has very good defenses, she has a good attack stat to work with, she has follow-up denial in the enemy phase, and a guaranteed follow-up in the player phase, plus extra stats. So she has just a lot of things going for her in her weapon. So what I've decided to show here is the build that I like to use on my Seiros, which is a miracle build. So with an infantry pulse setup, you can pre-charge her miracle, so she is able to really withstand a lot of opponents, truthfully. So I've gone plus HP here because with the new bolt tower coming out, it's going to be hitting for 45 damage. So if you have a plus attack, for example, Seiros, she's only going to get to she's only going to get to 45 HP at max investment. With everything thrown at her, she only gets to 45 HP. So you could solve that by having an HP seal or an HP A slot, but I really think the value of distant counter quick riposte is very, very high if you're going to be using her as a frontliner. So I think that the plus HP is actually the way to go if you're using this specific build. On pretty much any other build, so like a Wings of Mercy build, or just basically this build without the miracle setup, you would want to go with plus attack or plus res. Plus res is stacked Dragon Wall, plus attack, so she hits even harder. But definitely a very, very strong unit. And as of right now, a staple on nearly every, no, I'll just say it, as a staple on every single Anima defense team. Definitely a must-have for players in the game right now.
This path is the one I chose for myself. I have no regrets.
And our runner-up for the Infantry Dragons is Legendary Corrin. So Legendary Corrin is a very good tank because of her negating Fang ability, plus her weapon. So she has a lot of internal synergy. You'll notice that basically it's just her base kit you see here, plus Harsh Command and a seal. So her base kit is ready to go. She's ready to go right out of the box in a lot of ways, and built for a lot of success in the arena. So her negating Fang gives her damage reduction, and because it's a special base damage reduction, it does cut through things like Deadeye or Innis, those things that would normally cut through damage reduction because it's non-special damage reduction that those things cut through. So she is very good at tanking things, and then negating Fang actually gives her a retaliation with like a miniature Dragonic aura. So it gives her bonus damage based on her attack stat. So I've chosen to go plus attack here, plus the attack speed bond, plus a drive attack. So she's really, really stacking up that attack stat. So when she hits back with that negating Fang, she hits very, very hard. And the thing about Corrin is she recharges that negating Fang right away because of her weapon's effect that gives her special acceleration. She's going to charge up that negating Fang instantly and be able to fire it off again. In most situations, right? So if the opponent has something like guard, then that's going to be a different story. But in most every situation, she'll constantly have negating Fang up for the first engagement. She is weak to something like brave weapons, and if something outspeeds her, that can be dangerous as well. But a lot of times she'll kill those units that outspeed her at the end of the day. So a very, very strong unit, very good for arena. Also can be good for Aether Raid's offense during the win season if you want to use her in that respect. But definitely good for your wind core to go with your new legendary Sigurd that we just got. Ooh, such a terror. But yeah, a great dragon unit in the form of legendary Corrin here. Now we're going to get into some honorable mentions. So our first honorable mention is going to be Nils. So Nils is a lot like his sister, Ninian, in that he has a high HP stat. So I've shown him here stacking HP for an Anima Season defense to avoid isolation from Bridal Fjorm. So unfortunately on Anima Season he is weak to Naga, because Naga gives dragon effectiveness to all of her allies, but he doesn't have, well, you could try to stack his defense to avoid Mila, but it's going to be a little bit harder. But the more common isolator on Dark Season is going to be Mila, so harder to dodge in that aspect. So that's why I've chosen Anima for him. So he has a very high HP stat, making him a good top unit for an infantry pulse chain. Plus, his Frost Breath gives debuffs to enemies within a certain range, and then also after he dances or plays for him. You know, he plays his flute, right? So it's good synergy for things like Mirabilis that double down on opponents' debuffs with her Flower of Ease, and also for Thrasier to enable her killing intent. So he has good synergy with the Anima Mythics in that way, as well as any other units that just want the opponent to get some debuffs stacked onto them. So definitely a good support unit for your Aether Raids defense team. Next up, we have one of my favorite units, which is Noe. So Noe is a really, really good unit with her new Refine. So she has a distant counter Refine. Unfortunately, it kept the special deceleration, so she actually has +1 special cooldown, which is, you know, not the greatest thing. But it does give her extra stats, and it gives her penalty negation. So a lot like Brunya's Fimbulvelter, she does not care about getting penalties stacked on top of her. So you don't need to soak for Noe, you don't need to worry about you know, any kind of dagger debuffs or any other debuffs that your opponent might be running. So she ends up being very strong in that aspect. And also because she has a distant counter weapon, it frees up her A slot to run something like you see here in the form of attack speed solo. So this is a null follow-up Noe. You could also run a null C Disruptor Noe, which is actually the Noe that I personally run, and stack her res instead and run quick riposte and all kinds of different things. There's lots of different options for her for sure. But the null follow-up set is probably the strongest in my opinion. Dragon's Ire is also an option, but because Bramimond exists with his guaranteed follow-up, I think null follow-up is a better option overall for Light Season. Definitely a very strong unit with very balanced stats that actually holds up super, super well in 2021. And finally, our last honorable mention is Enna. So Enna is a very good Grail unit that we have, and she has a really good stat line to be using Dragon Wall. So you see here, she has 60 visible res. That's crazy. So that's after Dagger and Air. She gets 60 visible res, so that means her Dragon Wall is going to be going off pretty much 100% of the time. Especially with Blackfire Breath. Blackfire Breath is essentially attack res lull 5 as long as she is solo. So she's an independent unit as well. She doesn't really need the support, but you could always support her as well with something like a New Year's Valuria or with a Corrin, things like that. All good things, all good options for Enna. She's very, very thick at the end of the day, especially with Blackfire Breath, or even her native Pale Breath, which gives her plus attack and defense, plus attack and defense debuff negation. That's also a great option for her, but she is a very, very thick tank. I didn't realize how great her stat allocation is until I was making this video and putting her together, and I kind of want to build her now. I don't really have a need for her, so I'm probably not going to. But looking at her, I'm like, that's a pretty exciting build. That's a pretty strong and great build. So definitely a good unit to build up if you're looking for a light season carry and you happen to have an extra Seiros if you want to fodder her off for that Dragon Wall.
I do not hate Duma. We simply could not agree on a path to walk together.
And finally, the #1 Dragon Infantry unit is Mila. So Mila is a meta-centralizing unit, and that's why she's #1, truly. So is she the best at tanking? No. Is she the best at offense? No. But she is so centralizing and requires counterplay, and so that's why I view her as the #1 unit. So she has the ability to isolate opponents based on a defense check, and she has very, very good defense to work with. She also is a good support unit with Mila's turn wheel, enabling an extra turn for your light season, which is good to get pots especially. So if you're having trouble maneuvering around an opponent's team to get the Aether pots, she really helps out with that. She can isolate dancers, but she can also isolate things like restore traps or return traps. She's really good for just all that kind of stuff. And she really makes opponents use things like Dancing Eldigan, use things like, you know, an unideal unit like Dancing Xander. So she really pulls the meta in a way that is favorable to her. She gives the defense stat to your allies as well, so she's good support for tanks in general. So she's just overall a super great support unit. Not to mention Nurturing Breath here gives +2 to everything in a pretty wide range. You could also run Lightning Breath or Indifferent Breath with a defense Refine, which will give her even more defense than you see here, but 64 defense is pretty good to isolate most everything. So yeah, definitely just a very, very, very strong unit and something that demands counterplay. And that is the video. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. I am still working getting set up everything here in my apartment, so sorry for the dark face cam today. Definitely working on figuring out the lighting and how best to record. But I wanted to get this video out there for you guys, so make sure to give it a like if you enjoyed the content. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already as well. There's also a link to the Discord in the description below, so make sure to hop on board with that. Lots of cool people there. That's also where I happen to stream all my Aether Raids offense matches. So if you are interested in Aether Raids offense content, I don't post a lot of that on YouTube, so make sure to hop on the Discord and come hang out and make some new friends. With all that being said, make sure to tune in tomorrow for the top 5 Infantry Beast video, and talk to you guys later. Bye!